My name is Mara Ellington, 32 years old. By the time the string lights blinked on over the resort's palm-lined courtyard, I'd already done 3 rounds of small talk and 2 rounds of, "Oh, that's so generous of you to help," from relatives who treat money like magic, appears when needed, never questioned. I was not at the resort. I was the outlier, tucked in a modest Airbnb 20 minutes away, where the walls didn't carry other people's expectations. I'd chosen distance on purpose. Peace has a sound. It's the hum of an old fridge and your own breath coming back to you. My brother Brandon had always been reckless with money, but I used to file it under young and learning. Venmo favors, bar tabs that sang off his wrist, a habit of playing lifeguard with other people's credit lines. In the weeks leading up to his wedding, he'd given me a monologue about a florist price hike and a photographer who wanted a bigger deposit, babe. You know how they are. I said I'd help within reason, that I could pay vendors directly or load a prepaid card with $1,000 as my gift. Hard boundary. Somewhere in that fog of goodwill and deadlines, I'd given him temporary access to one of my cards for a quick hold. My mistake. I believed temporary meant something to him. At 11:03 p.m., my phone snapped my attention out of the quiet. Large transaction approved. I didn't panic. Not at first. Fraud alerts sometimes lunge at shadows. I opened my bank app, blinked once, then again, as if the numbers would rearrange themselves if I squinted hard enough. $9,870 to the reception venue, paid in full, from my account. I scrolled backward. The floor dropped a few inches under me. $500 here, $200 there, $1,100 slipped in between 2 groceries and a gas station. Smaller withdrawals spread like fingerprint powder over the last 10 days. The $9,170 wasn't the first blow, it was the confession. Available balance, $11.33. A punchline written by someone else. I called him. No answer. Called again. Third time, he picked up on a laugh and clinking glassware like the night had never heard the word limit. "What?" Brandon said, tone soft with liquor and victory. "You charged the venue to my card." A beat, as if he were choosing which script to read from. Then he said it in that throwaway way that cuts deeper because of how easy it is. "You're rich and alone. Consider it your gift." There are angers that explode and angers that calcify. Mine did the latter. I hung up before my voice could break, set the phone on the table, and watched the black screen mirror a face I barely recognized, flat, almost calm, as if grief had filed it down. I didn't sleep. I made a checklist instead. At 7 a.m., when the sky was still rinsing itself from gray to blue, I called my mother. "Don't make trouble," she said. "No hello, just policy." "It's his big day." He was distressed. A dull laugh caught in my throat. "Only you will have problems," I said, and I meant every word. Then I packed my bag, the way you pack a life you've already decided not to live, and left the key on the Airbnb counter. On the drive back to my apartment, the freeway cut through miles of citrus groves and billboards promising easy loans. My phone rattled the console with messages I didn't open. "Where are you?" from Dad. "You're being dramatic," from Brandon. A cheerful voice memo from an aunt who loves other people's drama as long as it fits into a story she can tell later. I let them stack like unread mail. I did make one call, the only one that mattered, my bank. I did not authorize the reception or any associated charges, I said. The woman on the line had that careful, trained empathy that never steps over the legal line. She flagged the transactions, launched a dispute, and told me to watch for follow-ups and temporary credits. Outside my building, the morning was brittle and bright. Even the trees looked like they were trying not to stare. I carried my suitcase up the stairs, opened my door, and was hit by the warm smell of the old place. Books, coffee beans, lemon cleaner. The apartment felt small but honest. I put my phone face down and opened my laptop. Paperwork has a pulse if you listen. Dates and amounts, vendor names, the shape of a lie repeating itself. I pulled down statements for the last 2 months, the way a detective wall grows from a single pushpin. Florist, $450. Liquor store, $289. Suit rental, Manhattan, $602. The little bleed before the arterial spray. I remembered a week earlier, Brandon insisting he needed to put a card on file to secure a different vendor because they don't do checks anymore. He'd texted me a link, and I'd watched a whirring circle load and almost asked if he'd removed my card afterward. Almost. I can still feel the weight of the almost. By late afternoon, I'd printed enough paper to make a snowdrift. I put the stack in a red folder and slid it into the freezer for 15 minutes, as if cold could keep rage from curling the pages. Old habit, new use. When it came out, my hands were steady. I turned my phone back on around dusk. 40 plus missed calls. Brandon's first voicemail was oily with confidence. You embarrassed yourself for what? A little family borrowing? And by message 5, his voice thinned out, the mask slipping. I'll figure out a way to pay you back. Promise. The math he texted me later read like a self-parody. $200 month for years, as if interest and insult shared a decimal. Mom's text came quietly, like a prayer she thought could reroute the storm. Just come tomorrow. Don't make things worse. You don't want to carry this bitterness forever. I stared until the words stopped meaning anything and typed a single line that did, You raised a thief. Now you'll watch him sink. Then I blocked her. My hands didn't shake. I didn't go to the wedding. I already knew the reception wouldn't happen. The bank would reverse the charge, the venue would balk, and the people who love appearances more than accountability would throw something together in a cousin's backyard. That night, a photo slid across a mutual friend's feed. Plastic chairs, mismatched tablecloths, a DJ under a rental canopy with one working speaker. The comments tried for rustic charm and landed on oops. I felt neither triumph nor guilt. Only a quiet that felt like the first deep breath after surfacing. I wish I could tell you that was the end. It wasn't. The next morning, my father called with a softness he reserves for negotiations. We're working with someone who can help smooth everything out, he said. Temporary solution. It'll help us all in the long run. Temporary. Solution. The words slid under my skin and sat there like a splinter. There was a shape behind them I recognized from old family stories that always ended with me paying for it. I hung up, logged into my credit monitoring, and there it was, a $15,000 personal loan application, pending approval, in my name, my full legal name, my social, my home address. The no that rose in me had a spine. I called the lender. This is fraud, I said, slow and precise. I did not apply. The woman on the line's pause said everything. She put an immediate hold on the application and flagged my file. I filed a police report number into the box that asked for it because I had one now. Then I pulled up a new email in a new tab and typed my lawyer's name. Hurt had left the building. Procedure had taken its chair. In the quiet afterward, I made tea and stood at the window watching a couple walk their dog. The dog stopped to stare up at a pigeon on the wire, the way a creature studies a thing it can't reach. I understood. All my life I'd been taught that keeping the family together meant handing over pieces of myself without receipt. Not this time. This time there would be receipts and records, and if they wanted a fix, it would be the kind that comes stamped by a court. Outside, the pigeon startled and flew. Inside, I opened the red folder and set it beside the laptop. The apartment hummed. Fridge, old pipes, the low pulse of a city busy with its own messes. I picked up a pen. Let the venue call, let the bank reverse, let the phone light up with numbers I don't know. Let my mother rehearse apologies for a story that can't be revised. The night before the wedding had taken what was left of my softness. What grew in its place had edges. I wasn't after revenge. I was after gravity. And they were about to feel it. The morning after the loan attempt, I turned my kitchen table into a war room. The red folder lay open like a wound. Post-its spread into a topography of harm. My printer chugged and spit out dates that lined up like coordinates. $289 liquor, $450 florist, $602 suit rental in Manhattan, $178 rehearsal dinner deposit, little teeth marks in my account before the jaw locked on $9,070. It hit me how deliberate it all was. People like to call that kind of taking panic. It wasn't panic. It was practice. I called the bank again and asked to speak to the fraud team. We'll provisionally credit the account while we investigate, the agent said, careful and exact. You'll receive a packet for your affidavit. Please complete it within 10 days. Happy to, I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone who owned things that couldn't be taken. At 10:17 a.m., my phone lit with the venue's number. I let it go to voicemail and listened on speaker, pen hovering over a date. Ms. Ellington, this is Clara with Crescent Gardens. We've received a chargeback notification on a payment tied to... She named Brandon and his fiancée. We can't proceed without cleared funds. Please call us. I pictured the ballroom, string lights looping to the rafters, waitstaff being briefed on timelines that assumed money would behave. The call ended with a brittle politeness that said she'd had this conversation before, just usually with the groom on the line pretending to look surprised. At 11:02, Brandon's fiancée called. This time I picked up. Mara, I'm so sorry to bother you, she started, breathless, voice glazed with fear. The venue says the payment bounced. They're going to cancel. We don't have a backup card. Brandon said he said it was all handled. Is there any way? I'm not paying another cent, I said, steady. You'll figure it out. A small sound caught in her throat. We don't have time. I didn't either, I said, and hung up because mercy that isn't mutual is just another form of theft. By late afternoon, the messages changed key. Brandon's first text of the day came in hot. You embarrassed yourself. And by the fifth, he'd pivoted into strategy. I can pay you back $200 a month. Swear. He even attached an emoji like we were negotiating pizza. My mother followed with an evergreen. Just come tomorrow. Don't make trouble. My father added the word that told me someone else was now in the room with them. We've got a temporary solution. That phrase lodged in my ribs. Temporary solutions are how families like mine build permanent damage. The next ping wasn't a call. It was an alert from my credit monitor. New inquiry. Personal loan application. $15,000. My name. My social. My address. I dialed the lender. I didn't apply, I said. Lock it. They did. I filed a police report, scanned the confirmation into the red folder, and watched a version of myself on my laptop screen do exactly what she wished she'd learned years ago, make things official. When I hung up, I emailed all of it to my lawyer, Greer and Hart. Identity theft and unauthorized transactions, I wrote in the subject line, family related. Lena called within 10 minutes. Walk me through it from the top, she said. I did. The midnight charge, the small bleed, the bounced reception, the loan. We'll file the civil claim immediately, she said. Keep everything. Screenshots, call logs, envelopes, the fraud affidavit. Don't throw anything away. I already have a folder, I said. Good, she said. Now we build the spine. Around 5 p.m., I made the tactical mistake of opening social media. There it was, a backyard scene in my cousin Deanna's yard, plastic chairs in rows, a sagging arch stripped of flowers, a DJ under a miniature tent coaxing sound from one working speaker. Someone had captioned it, "Love is all you need." The comments bloomed with hearts and the word intimate used like duct tape. Relatives texted their own edits. It was charming, rustic. I closed the apps and turned my phone face down. Nothing about charm pays invoices. At 7:42 p.m., the venue called again, this time less polite. We've already staffed, ordered, set aside space, Clara said, voice clipped. If a payment was made with funds from an unauthorized account, we'll be pursuing our own remedies. Understood, I said. Do what you need to do. It felt clean to say it. I wasn't arguing with reality anymore. That night, I printed duplicates of everything and labeled the spines with a thick marker. A. Transactions. B. Communications. C. Credit inquiries. D. Legal. I slid them into a banker's box and stacked it by the door like luggage for a trip I hadn't planned but would take anyway. Sometime after 9, my door buzzer rattled. My chest did that old, startled animal thing, then settled. I didn't move. The buzzer rattled again. A third time. I stayed in my chair, watching the red light blink and then go dark. A few minutes later, a text. Open the door. Stop being dramatic. I turned off the lamp and let the apartment show him nothing. The next morning, the bank emailed. Provisional credit applied, pending investigation. The available balance line refilled like a glass under a tap. Relief came in a brief, bright wash. It didn't linger. Money returning is not the same as what was taken being restored. That will always come with an asterisk. Brandon called at noon. When I didn't pick up, he sent a spreadsheet screenshot, a payment plan, a timeline, a budget he'd clearly invented in 5 minutes. I'll get a second job. third if I have to. It would be funny if it weren't an insult measured in cells. I replied with a single sentence, all communication goes through counsel. Then I pasted Lena's email and put down the phone like it was a hot pan. That afternoon, my father called. He tried the low, reasonable tone reserved for bank managers and women he thinks can be talked into things. We've got someone who can help with the paperwork, he said. Just to smooth it, no one needs to get hurt. There's already harm, I said, and your someone doesn't make fraud legal. Long pause. You always did make things difficult. I stopped making them easy, I said, and ended the call. The fixer showed up in my life as a rumor first. He's a guy who knows forms. Then, as a number, I didn't recognize sending 2 sentences that read like a promise and a threat. I can make the paperwork disappear. Let's not involve lawyers. I took a screenshot, saved the number as fixer, and forwarded it to Lena with the subject, extortion. Light seasoning. She replied with one word, documented. Then, a moment later, report it. I did. The day of the backyard wedding. The photos accumulated like proof that denial is a setting people can live in for years. I went for a walk instead. The air smelled like rain and dust, and the beginning of whatever came next. In a shop window, a mannequin wore a suit, not unlike the one Brandon had rented in Manhattan with my money. I looked away, then back, like checking if an old reflex still had power over me. It didn't. That evening, Dad texted, "We handled it. Stop now." The word handled made something cold in me laugh. Handled means the problem is walking somewhere else on 2 legs. I spent the rest of the night scanning. Every time I dropped a document into a PDF and named it in a way that would make sense to a judge, I felt the room inch closer to the shape of a life I recognized, one where my boundaries had signatures. At 11:56 p.m., a final text arrived from Brandon. "Please, I'm sorry." Not a period, not a plan, just that small word, like a key he thought might still fit. I stared at it until the letters unhooked themselves from meaning, then I screenshotted it and slid the image into B Communications. Sleep came like a truce. In the morning, the phone rang again. Crescent Gardens. Clara sounded tired, but colder. "We've escalated," she said. "If your name is anywhere on this, we'll need statements." "You'll have everything," I said. "I'm already building the file." "Good," she said, surprising me. "You wouldn't believe how often people expect us to swallow it." "I would," I said, and we both laughed a little, not because anything was funny, but because recognition makes room for air. When we hung up, I sat for a minute with the quiet. I thought about how many times I'd kept the peace by making myself small. How often I'd accepted temporary solutions because the alternative, being the problem, felt like betrayal. And how loyalty to a lie is just another way of letting it rob you slowly. I opened the red folder and pulled out the top page. The original, $9,870. My fingerprint smudged the corner. I pressed it flat and slid it into a sleeve. In the hallway outside, someone's dog's nails clicked on tile. In my chest, something that had been holding on so hard finally let go. I wasn't angry, not in the way that corrodes. I was precise. And precision is a blade no one sees until it's done cutting. They wanted me to be the silence that made their story work. I'd chosen to be the record that didn't. By the end of that week, the air around me felt heavier, like everyone in my family was holding their breath, waiting for me to blink first. They didn't know I'd already stopped breathing for them months ago. It started on Wednesday morning. I was getting ready for work when my email pinged with a fraud alert from a merchant service company I'd never heard of, a catering business. The message thanked me for opening an account. I didn't. By noon, there were 3 more. A photo rental, a floral supply, and a short-term vendor credit line. All in my name. The only thing they had in common was Brandon's wedding week. I called the first company, explained it was fraud. The representative was polite but hesitant. "Ms. Ellington, these applications list your phone number and driver's license. The signatures look familiar." "Of course they do," I said quietly. It was happening again. The bleeding hadn't stopped. They'd just found a new vein. That evening, my lawyer, Lena, called. "They've doubled down," she said flatly. "A cluster of short-term merchant accounts under your name. A few actually processed. Small charges, deposits, rentals, photo booths, decorations. Most failed, but it's enough to show intent." "How?" I asked. "They already know I'm watching." "Desperation makes people stupid," she said. "And careless. They're trying to fill the hole you left." I sat down on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. Can you trace it? We're trying, she said. We pulled the digital signatures. The IP address is tied to a middleman, some consultant or fixer who files small business paperwork for people under the table. Guess whose name came up on one of the calls we subpoenaed? My stomach dropped. My father's. Right again, Lena said. He told the fixer to help Brandon clean this up. His exact words. The next morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was deep, calm, practiced. The kind of tone people use when they think they're doing you a favor. Ms. Ellington, he said, I'm the one your family's been using to sort this out. We can make all the paperwork disappear. No lawyers, no mess. You just have to let it go. It wasn't even a threat yet, just the sound of arrogance disguised as reassurance. I said nothing. He continued, lowering his voice. Look, we both know families make mistakes. I can fix this before it becomes something bigger. But if you push, everyone loses. Your brother, your parents, maybe even you. Then the line went quiet for a beat. You don't want that, right? He wanted me to say no. I said, I want this on record. Then I hung up and forwarded the entire call log to Lena and to the police. That was the moment everything shifted from ugly to criminal. By Friday, Brandon's employer put him on administrative leave. Officially, it was for accounting discrepancies. Unofficially, they were looking into whether he'd misused client accounts. Apparently, a pattern had started to show. He called me that night, voice trembling. Mara, please, they're talking about firing me. Can you tell them it's not? I can't tell them anything, I said. You did this. It's not like that, he said quickly. I was trying to fix it. The venue was threatening us, and Mom said, Don't, I snapped. Don't say her name like she's your excuse. He fell silent, then whispered, You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said. You thought if you made it complicated enough, I'd give up. That's what you all thought. Then I hung up before he could cry. 2 days later, Lena's assistant emailed me a discovery file, audio from a recorded call between the fixer and my mother. Her voice was calm, almost bored, the way she gets when she's pretending things aren't serious. Mom, will she really notice? Fixer, if we move quick, no. Just clean up the trail. Mom, she's always dramatic. She'll get over it. Hearing those words, she'll get over it, was worse than hearing Brandon's laughter that night. It was the sound of every time she told me to stay quiet wrapped into a sentence. I played it 3 times, then sent it to Lena with a message. File it. That weekend, my dad called, voice low, rehearsed. Sweetheart, don't get upset. We didn't know he was going to do all that paperwork. We thought he was just helping us out, smoothing things over. You mean covering your tracks, I said. It was a misunderstanding, he insisted. You weren't supposed to get hurt. We just wanted to fix the mess. You wanted to fix it by making me part of it, I said. He went quiet, then sighed. You always make things harder than they need to be. Sometimes family needs to bend a few rules to survive. Family doesn't forge your name, I said. Family doesn't lie about it afterward. When I hung up, I realized something had changed in me. The anger was gone. There was only clarity. The fixer tried again 2 days later. Another message, this time through a new number. You're playing with fire. Drop this, or things will get messy for everyone. I screenshotted it, emailed it to Lena, then to the detective on my case. 3 hours later, Lena called, her voice sharper than usual. He just crossed into extortion. We're escalating. Good, I said. That night, I scrolled through old photos. Brandon and me as kids at the lake, me holding his hand, him grinning like he owned the sun. Our parents smiling behind us, the perfect postcard of family. Looking at those pictures, I realized the truth. I'd been raised to believe silence was loyalty. That forgiveness was a family heirloom we were expected to pass down. But silence had turned into permission, and permission had turned into abuse. This time, the cycle would stop with me. By the end of the week, the fallout began. The fixer disappeared, deleting numbers, erasing accounts, leaving behind more digital fingerprints than he realized. The police traced the metadata from the fraudulent loan and merchant account straight to him and to Brandon. The DA's office called Lena to confirm they were opening a formal investigation into attempted identity theft and fraud. I didn't feel relief, not yet, just inevitability. The following evening, I got one more call, a number I almost didn't answer. It was my mom. Her voice was quiet, smaller than I remembered. Your father and I are dealing with a lot right now. Things got out of hand. They got out of hand when you made them my problem, I said. She sighed. We didn't mean to hurt you. We thought you'd understand. I do, I said. Better than you think. And then, before she could say anything else, I ended the call. That night, I opened the red folder one last time. The pages were heavier now. Police reports, call transcripts, screenshots, emails, a full history of everything they'd tried to bury. I placed one final document on top, the DA's confirmation letter. For the first time since it began, I exhaled. The fix was coming. Not their kind. Mine. The kind that ends things for good. The call from the district attorney's office came on a Wednesday morning. I remember because I was halfway through my first cup of coffee when the unknown number lit up the screen, and for the first time in months, I didn't hesitate to answer. Ms. Ellington, the woman said, voice clear and official. This is Investigator Reyes with the County Fraud Division. We've reviewed your file. We're formally opening a criminal case against your brother, Brandon Ellington, and an associate named, she paused, papers shuffling, Thomas Cray, also known as the Fixer. It wasn't satisfaction I felt, it was gravity. Thank you, I said simply. We'll keep you updated as it develops, she added. If he contacts you directly again, forward everything. Do not respond. I already knew the drill. The folder had grown into a second box by then. 2 binders, 3 police reports, 43 screenshots, and a USB drive of calls I never thought I'd be brave enough to record. After I hung up, I stared at the coffee mug in my hand, chipped along the rim, my favorite one. There was a crack that had run down its side for years, small but spreading. I thought about how damage works that way. Silent, invisible, until it's everywhere. That afternoon, Brandon called from a new number. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity wins, even when it shouldn't. His voice sounded wrecked. Mara, please, they came to my apartment, the cops. They asked about the loans, the accounts. He stopped, breath ragged. I didn't know they'd actually make it criminal. You forged a loan in my name, I said quietly. I was trying to fix it, he shouted. Then, softer, desperate, I panicked. It got out of hand. You didn't panic, I said. You planned. He was crying now. You can drop the charges. Just tell them it was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, I said. It was theft. He was silent for a long time. Then, in a voice so small it almost disappeared, he said, Mom's blaming Dad. Dad's blaming me. Everyone's losing it. Good, I said. Now you know how it feels. He didn't respond. Just a choked breath, then a click. The next few days unfolded like a slow car crash. Lena called to tell me Brandon's employer had officially terminated him. They found discrepancies in his client accounts, she said. Not criminal, but enough to make him unemployable in finance. 2 hours later, she called again. The venue has filed its own civil claim against him for fraud. They're not negotiating. That night, the police sent over a copy of the metadata report tying the Fixer's laptop to the forged documents. It was so sloppy it was almost insulting. His real Gmail, real timestamps, even a location ping from Brandon's apartment. They didn't even try to hide, Lena said. Because they thought they were untouchable, I replied. The irony didn't escape either of us. On Friday evening, there was a knock at my door. I knew that knock. 3 soft, 1 sharp. My mother. I opened it just enough to see her face. She looked smaller, older, like the weight of all her don't make trouble speeches had finally turned physical. My father stood behind her, silent. We need to talk, she said, clutching a small wrapped box in her hands. No, I said. Mara, please, she whispered. We're sorry. We didn't mean for this to happen. We thought the loan was fake, that Brandon was just buying time. You thought I'd get over it, I finished. Like always. Her lips trembled. We never thought he'd take it that far. You didn't care how far it went, as long as it didn't cost you anything. She opened the box, revealing a delicate gold bracelet I recognized immediately. My grandmother's. It's yours, she said. I should have given it to you years ago. I looked at it. The same piece she once promised to give me, only for Laura to wear it to prom. Now, it looked like an apology wrapped in metal. I don't want things, I said. I wanted truth, and you picked him every time. She flinched like I'd hit her. My father finally spoke, voice low, brittle. You're punishing all of us for one mistake. One? I asked. Theft, fraud, forgery, gaslighting. Pick your favorite. He didn't answer. Please, my mother said, tears welling. We're still your parents. I stepped back, keeping the door halfway closed. Then you should have acted like it. I didn't slam the door. I just let it click shut between us, quiet but final. 3 days later, Lena filed the civil suit to accompany the DA's criminal case. Brandon was the primary defendant. My parents were named as accomplices in attempted identity fraud. They were served at home. Later, I learned my dad didn't open the envelope at first, just left it sitting on the table like ignoring it would make it disappear. But paper has a way of becoming heavier the longer you pretend it's not there. The hearing came faster than I expected. The courtroom was small, fluorescent, colder than it should have been. Brandon sat across from me at the defense table. He looked thinner, hair unkempt, wearing a blazer that didn't fit. No wedding ring. His wife had left. His lawyer whispered something in his ear. He just nodded, staring at the table. Lena slid a stack of folders onto our side. "Everything's in there," she murmured. Bank statements, fraud affidavits, screenshots, the forged loan application, a full paper trail of every lie. The judge reviewed the documents, eyes scanning fast, expression unreadable. Then he looked up at Brandon. "Mr. Ellington, do you understand the gravity of your actions?" Brandon's voice cracked. "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you wish to contest the plaintiff's evidence?" His lawyer cleared his throat. "We request leniency, Your Honor. The defendant acted under family pressure." The judge cut him off. "Pressure doesn't justify fraud." When the gavel hit the desk, the sound didn't echo like thunder. It was soft, almost merciful. Judgment entered in my favor. Repayment of $9,900 plus interest, all legal fees covered, and the part that made Brandon flinch. A written apology filed with the court and permanently attached to his record. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about naming what he did. I didn't look at him when it ended. I just gathered my papers and left. Outside the courthouse, the air felt raw, heavy with a storm that never came. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. A message from Lena. "Judgment recorded. They can't touch you now. It's over." For the first time in almost a year, I let myself believe her. That night, I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window, watching rain trace lines down the glass. I thought of every time my family had said, "Don't make trouble." They were right about one thing. I'd made plenty of it. But sometimes trouble is the only language power understands. Still, part of me mourned the quiet I'd never get back. There's no victory speech for this kind of war, just paperwork and exhaustion. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamed of the reception that never happened. A ballroom full of people laughing under lights paid for by someone else's silence. Except this time the music stopped. The lights went out. And I was the one who turned them off. 3 months after the judgment, I packed up my apartment. The movers didn't ask why I was starting over. They never do. They just wrapped the boxes in quiet efficiency while I labeled everything that was still mine. When the last box slid shut, the room looked hollow. Not like loss, but like possibility. I changed my number, switched banks, and rented a small loft across town. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I was done being findable to people who only remembered me when they needed saving. The news about my family came in fragments, the way storms break apart over distance. Brandon's job was gone for good. The company didn't want the scandal attached to their brand. His wife left him soon after, moving in with her parents 2 states away. She deleted every photo of their wedding online except one, a caption that read, "Sometimes family means finally walking away." The venue filed its own fraud claim. The fixer vanished, but the police had his signature, his emails, his name on 2 fake invoices. And my parents, the ones who used to speak in unison, were falling apart. My mother called once, not to apologize, but to ask if I'd heard anything new from the DA. Her voice was hollow, like she'd been talking to ghosts all week. My father didn't speak at all. I could hear his breathing in the background, sharp, shallow. The sound of a man realizing the empire he'd built on denial was dust. When she asked how I was, I told her the truth. "I'm free," I said. She cried, soft and quiet, as if even her guilt was tired. A week later, Brandon's wife left me a voicemail from a Washington area code. I listened twice before deleting it. "I'm sorry for bothering you. I just wanted to say, I didn't know. I thought he'd already fixed things with you. He said it was just a misunderstanding. Then I saw the filings, the forged signatures, all of it. I don't even know who I married. You were right to walk away. I should have too." I didn't call her back. There was nothing left to say. By autumn, everything had gone quiet again. The criminal investigation was still crawling through its stages, hearings, interviews, paperwork. Lena kept me updated in short bursts. The DA's moving forward. The fixer's been indicted. Brandon's cooperating to save himself. Each message was another small closing door. My life, meanwhile, started to look like my own again. Work was steady. My credit recovered. I even started painting again. something I hadn't touched since I was 21. Every canvas came out red at first, like I was bleeding out old anger, but slowly the colors shifted. Soft blues, warm golds, the shades of peace I didn't know how to mix before. Sometimes, though, I'd still dream about that night. The phone buzzing in the dark, the bank notification, Brandon's voice, smug and slurred. "You're rich and alone. Consider it your gift." Only now in the dream I'd hang up sooner. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't beg for cents. I'd just save the receipt and build a wall out of every boundary I'd ever ignored. In December, I got an email from Lena with the subject line, "Final closure." Brandon had agreed to a restitution plan monitored by the court. His wages, whatever new job he managed to find, would be garnished until the judgment was paid in full. The fixer had taken a plea deal. My parents' accounts were cleared of direct fraud involvement, but their names would remain in the record as willful enablers. I stared at the email for a long time, then I closed it. Because it didn't feel like victory. It felt like a ceasefire. I took a trip that winter. My first real trip alone in years. Portland. I rented a small cabin near the coast, surrounded by fog and pine. The air smelled like salt and quiet. No buzzing phones. No, "we need to talk" voicemails. I walked along the beach every morning, barefoot in the cold sand, until my feet went numb and my head cleared. One morning, a gull swooped down and snatched a piece of driftwood from the shore. It reminded me of the stick my father had handed Amanda on her birthday, the insult disguised as a gift, the moment that split our lives into before and after. For some reason, I smiled, because maybe that was all this ever was. Them handing me something broken and calling it love. And me, finally learning I didn't have to accept it. When I got home, I hung one of my new paintings on the wall, the first one that wasn't red. A quiet blue sea, a faint golden horizon. I titled it Receipts. Not for what they owed me, for what I reclaimed. The last time I heard Brandon's voice wasn't from him. It was on the local news months later. A brief segment about financial rehabilitation programs for ex-offenders. His face flashed for 3 seconds. Older, thinner, his eyes dull. He was speaking to a reporter. "I hurt people who loved me. I thought I could fix it with words. Turns out you can't undo a lie once it's written in ink." For the first time, I believed him. Not because he'd changed, but because life had finally stopped protecting him. I haven't seen my parents since the day they stood outside my door with that bracelet. I keep it locked in the red folder now, the one that used to hold proof of everything they tried to take. The bracelet sits on top, cold and silent, a reminder of 2 things. That people who think blood is an excuse rarely know what love costs, and that sometimes the most peaceful sound in the world is nothing. Last week, I met with Lena one final time. She handed me a single sheet of paper, the closure summary. The last legal step. When I signed it, she smiled. "So," she said, "what's next?" I thought about it, really thought. Then I laughed. A small, real laugh that felt strange in my throat. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe something that doesn't need fixing." I went home, made coffee, and stood at the window as the city lights blinked on one by one. No missed calls, no noise, just peace. That's how you know a story is really over, when the silence finally feels like a choice.